really great article from Search Engine Land. Why AI adoption may look bigger than it really is. So this article is fascinating. So we often utilize the data provider Spark Toro, who's quoted in it. Basically, it's a great source of industry kind of adoption for search and for and for just web trends at a higher level and AI trends as well. So the article essentially says, and the data says, at its peak, about 37% of US desktop users visited OpenAI or ChatGPT in September 2025. According to the data Rand Fishkin cited, who's with SparkToro, that figure fell to 34% by March. Fishkin said the same general pattern appeared in the EU and UK, though desktop usage was roughly 10% higher than in the US. Claude gained with professionals, so that was another insight. And there's a theory that AI usage is huge with businesses and not with consumers. So I think this is really interesting. And for someone myself that and many of you listening have, I witnessed literally the rise of the internet. I've started my career in 1998. So the internet was new. E-commerce wasn't really a thing, right? There was no social media. Bandwidth speeds were slow. There was no videos online. There was nothing like that. And so, the adoption, usually what happens is it goes from like the novelty. When something launches, it goes from novelty. Then it goes to mass adoption, but it has to evolve. Right? So if we think about it at a higher level, kind of historically, how the web has really progressed, of going from e-commerce to then being a place of social media, and then video, right? And then apps, when smartphones, right? Apps was the big craze. Every brand needed an app, all that stuff, right? And then so now you're at a point where AI is in a very similar pattern, where it's out of beta, it's being utilized, people are recognizing some of its uses, but also I think that the media is not helping things, quite frankly, by pounding in everyone's brain. I heard recently too that you have half of everyone that's scared that, hey, AI is going to have a Terminator situation, and AI is going to literally take over the world and erase humans, right? And then you have the other half of people that embrace it and love it. We're in that camp. We embrace it and love it because we see its endless capabilities to help scale from a business perspective, and personal too, by the way. So I just think it's interesting. I think this just could be the natural progression of where things are at. Personally, I think it's moving out of its novelty phase right now. And I think it's already moved out. But it's out of the novelty phase and more entrenched in, okay, there are different platforms for different purposes, right? Like the article alludes to what it actually says about Claude, right? Even for our own company, we use every platform, but we use it for certain things. We don't use one platform for everything because we've learned that, as marketers, some of these platforms have better functionality and uses than others. And so I just thought this was interesting. This is kind of one of those articles where it's like, okay, I think it could be right. The AI adoption may actually look bigger than it actually is, right? Another little nugget, and I know I mentioned this to the team earlier today, that we were actively testing at Brick Marketing ChatGPT's ads. So I'm seeing search data. And, there's not much data really, but I'm seeing impression level data and comparing that to traditional search for the audience. So that gives kind of another picture of like, okay, what's it doing, right? So anyway, this is a very loaded and interesting article. So Catherine, John, what do you guys think on this?
The thing about a term like adoption is that when it comes to AI, which is so versatile, we have to define what that means.
Right.
Is it somebody using it to help write an email? Is it somebody using it to help make a purchasing decision? So usage is so varied that it makes it somewhat tricky for even like a brand to discover how to utilize this and to how to get their brand in the conversation when people are adopting it. So it might look bigger because of the headlines, right? The
Right.
adoption
Right.
might look
Yep.
bigger because of the headlines. Oh, the AI, and it might take away jobs. Now that type of conversation is dying down because AI is just a machine and you need a human to
Right.
police what it's saying and doing. But at the same time, there is adoption happening that is affecting the sales cycle for companies. So,
Yeah, but you know
you
what,
know what I'm
Catherine,
saying?
I do, and I think you're right on many levels, but especially on on the consumer side of things. Thinking back to the early days of the web, that literally followed this very similar progression, where the
Mm,
web was used for research, like the
mm,
businesses, like data decisions were done. For the early days of search, early days of the web, e-commerce really wasn't prevalent yet. People weren't comfortable with buying, right? There was no Apple Pay. There was no easy checkout. There was no, right? So I think that personally, I think that in the coming years, sooner than we think, when agents are purchasing and the agentic web that everyone talks about is fully flushed out and consumers are actually comfortable letting Amazon's AI tool purchase for them, letting Google Gemini purchase for them, letting
mm.
ChatGPT actually make purchases for them on their behalf, then the B2C, the consumer based adoption will skyrocket, I think.
Yes.
So I don't know. John, what are your thoughts on this? And we'll move on.
Yeah, I think the reason that you see lower percentages of people using AI is because, like you said, a lot of the novelty has worn off. And a
Yep.
lot of people are sort of sick of AI being pushed into their faces, right? It's not like
Yep.
the internet kept its, it wasn't highly monetized when it first started. So people were interested and they were interested in
Right.
using it because it was something of their own. They chose to do so.
Right.
But AI is being pushed into, regular people's lives so frequently that I think a lot of people are kind of, they're kind of over it, right? They're being forced to use AI in some places and they're seeing how, well, it's not really 100% ready for a lot of the use cases that it's being forced into. So a lot of people's perception of AI is getting worse and worse and worse over time. I use
Yep.
AI, I see a lot of ways that it's very helpful, especially with work. And there are some things that I use it for in my personal life, but I'm not going to it constantly in my personal life to, you know, replace, the way I search online and things like that, because it's very helpful, but it's just not fully ready for some of those tasks yet.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Right.
Well said. Well said.